Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. Now, we continue with the campaign trail. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen visited the Maboneng precinct in Johannesburg. Steenhuisen and his party's mayoral candidate was canvassing for business people to find out how they are coping. The DA promises to improve basic service delivery.
You know what? As political parties and politicians, we've expected ordinary citizens to adapt their lives to the COVID-19. I think it would be crazy to suggest that we don't have to adapt our lives to the COVID-19. So we had a terrific manifesto launch on the weekend, watched by hundreds of thousands of people. We had to do it differently. It wasn't in a stadium this time, but we were still able to get that message across.
EFF leader Julius Malema at the same time says that his party is not worried about anyone taking issue with the number of supporters at their manifesto launch. He was speaking during the unveiling of the party's election billboard in Kempton Park, east of Johannesburg. Malema says that the billboard is a sign that EFF is ready to continue campaigning around South Africa.
Cyril had more people in Tembisa. Cyril had more people in Soweto. It has never been an issue. These nonsensical regulations that must apply to the EFF is not going to happen. So even the DA's thing that is going to take action against the EFF, they will have to start with Cyril. Cyril had more than the required number in Soweto. There was no problem. Cyril had more than the required number in Tembisa. Yesterday, there was no problem. What is this thing that there are rules for EFF and there are rules for other people? They put regulations to regulate us so that they don't comply with the same regulations and then they outsmart us. We're not going to allow that. We're not going to be outsmarted by fools.
All right, so a number of parties now over the weekend and today releasing their election manifestos. And today, of course, was the turn of the governing party in a lot of the municipalities around the country. And via Zoom to talk to us a little bit more about the ruling party's manifesto launch in Tshwane, we're now joined by political analyst Sandile Swana. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program. He's on the line, I believe. A very good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Peter, and to your viewers.
All right. Now, for somebody like me with grey hair, we've seen a lot of government election manifesto, local government election manifestos. And I'm going to ask you, over the whole weekend and today, did you hear anything different?
The most powerful thing that I can say I have heard this weekend, interestingly, was from the DA, which is simply to say, if I were to put it in my own language, that at least the infrastructure and the basic services that we've had, maybe even during apartheid, can be restored by the DA. So it's not about improving on what we had. It's just about restoring what has been demolished during this period of independence since 1994. So that is encouraging to me. That is something fresh. In as much as it is not progress, at least if we can have what we had before, that to me would be a step forward.
So then, with that in mind, President Cyril Ramaphosa had to sell his party. Do you think that he managed?
Yes, selling his party, and you must remember what selling the ANC is, selling the idea of a long history in the struggle, selling the tripartite alliance, COSATU, going into this issue of saying the state is now going to stop outsourcing and people are going to have job security, not an expansion of jobs. When you stop outsourcing, you are not expanding jobs. These are not new jobs. They need to create 2 million new jobs, 2 million new jobs, a minimum per annum, which they have not been able to do, and so on and so forth. But from spiritually and emotionally, I think for the supporters of the ANC, he did a very good job. emotionally and spiritually to motivate them to vote for the ANC.
So let me ask you this then, because particularly at the beginning of his speech and a number of speakers before him, they concentrated and said quite a lot about what national government had done through a pandemic. And I was just trying to join the dots to see how that translates into service delivery where it matters at local level.
I did suspect that this COVID-19 is going to be an election ticket for the ANC from the start, because basically it was a space where the ANC can be the superstar. Nobody else can run a COVID-19 program. It's only them. But do not forget that when you go into the nitty-gritty, even in this COVID-19, a lot of corruption and theft of funds actually happened at local municipal level, even so, and including their own customers stole the money and stole the food parcels and all sorts of things like that. The national issues, you are correct, there are many other issues that are a product of national policy that they were discussing. And the issues, for instance, about job creation and all that, I am not aware of any specific municipality in South Africa run by the African National Congress that has actually excelled in local economic development. We are also not aware where they've actually been able to launch successfully the district development model. So yes, they are talking about things that are very far removed from the ward where you and I live. They are talking about things that are flying very, very high and very far from where we are as ordinary South Africans.
In many ways, a ruling party, a governing party, incumbent party, they don't really get to, what am I trying to say? The manifestos are a collection of promises. And so the opposition parties can present manifestos and say, look, this is what we'll do. The ruling party doesn't get that luxury. They actually have to say what they've done with mandates they got in the past. Do you think that he was able to say enough in terms of what they've done in 24 years to get another mandate?
Again, I think the DA did a far better job of that because they made proper reference to independent research, reports by the Auditor General, indexes rating them as the top 5 best performing municipalities in South Africa, etc., etc. The ANC has not been able to say in each category of services that when we took over power in 2016, you were here. Now today, in 2021, we've moved you by so many doors, you are now here. And that is the success that we've achieved in each municipality, etc., etc. They are not able to do that, and there's a good reason to do that is because most of the municipalities run by the African National Congress on the basic functions written in the Constitution that the municipality should be performing. On those functions, they have been underperforming. SSA, the Auditor General, the SIU, the Zono Commission, and many others have shown that there has been very poor performance overall in all these key basic functions.
It may be semantics, but it was interesting that the national chairperson of the party, Gwede Mantashe, says, we are committed to. He says, we're not making promises, we are committed to. I perhaps need you to help me understand what that means, because committed sounds to me like we're going to try to do something, but we're not promising we'll do it. And that way you cannot fail.
Look, they've been making promises for a long, long time, and they've got nothing else to do right now, today, other than to ask us for another chance, vote for the ANC, and give us another chance. We failed on the previous occasions, but on this occasion, we're going to do something. So what he is saying is actually semantics, because he knows that he should have been coming to read the report card of the African National Congress and says, here we are, we've got 9 out of 10 out of all the promises we've made before, we are a 90% an A-grade performer. Vote for us again. We don't have much to say. Let our results speak for themselves. Now they've got to be coming with fancy language that is difficult to interpret and to understand, because they have not delivered on the basic mandate demanded of them by the Constitution. They have not performed on their own previous manifestos, not at all.
Again, am I overreaching? Interestingly, he began his speech, the ANC president today, referencing former President Jacob Zuma. Does that suggest that there has to be some kind of peace between the two for there to be success for the ANC in general in the local government elections?
Absolutely. I mean, if you looked at the people who were sitting behind the microphone, the like of Sandile Swana and Sandile Swana from Free State and so on, they have to make sure that the Zuma faction, if there is such a thing, RT forces and all those types of people, that there is unity. When they lost Swana the last time, and they were in Swana this time, it was about divisions in the ANC. Today we know, I mean, he even mentioned the killing of an ANC candidate in the Mabopane area, in the history. So the thing about animosity, fierce competition among the ANC politicians is bitter, and it has got electoral consequences. So he has got to try and bring all the chickens to roost. One way or the other, try to bring them under the mother hen of the ANC, because they are scattered as we speak today.
All right, so we've heard the manifestos now. Do you get a sense, because this is what I'm getting a sense when I compare the local government elections over the years, is that you've got an electorate that's just fatigued and perhaps isn't certain about who to vote for?
I think we've got to look at the other researches as well. The EFF, which is probably, the EFF is probably the fastest growing party, probably in South Africa. They are not necessarily, from what other researchers and surveys have been saying, they are not necessarily actually winning votes from the ANC per se, but the new voters that are coming into places such as the EFF. And the DA is doing the same thing, but on a lesser pace, and so on. So the problem that the ANC has in this voter fatigue that you are referring to is that their own voters might just stay at home again. That is the issue about the voter fatigue. The ANC is in grave danger of people, their own supporters, simply getting sick and tired and not even going to the voting.
Sandile Swana, I'm sure we'll have many conversations in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's political analyst Sandile Swana speaking about the manifesto launch this evening of the African National Congress, which was delivered by the party's president, Cyril Ramaphosa.